Welcome back, Know-It-Alls. Thanks for the support by listening to the show. We send out our appreciation to each and every one of you for allowing our podcast to take up a little bit or a lot of your precious time. Please send us more of your feedback so we can make sure the show is better for you. Hey, Know-It-Alls, welcome back. This week it's Charlie Ray once again. And we have something a little special here. I was watching porn the other night, and it was threesome porn and orgy porn. And it got me thinking about Charlie Ray's past life. And I think it would be great to have Charlie Ray elaborate exactly to what I mean by that.
Well, Mr. Clay, I'm not sure what you're referring to. Would you be referring to my couple of years where I dabbled into the swinging world in the Midwest?
That would be exactly what I'm referring to. I just remember hearing stories about it years ago when we were hanging out. And I was like, I need to know more. Tell me more.
Well, I tell you, go ahead.
Yeah, no, you go ahead.
Well, as I say, I am the most unlikely looking person that would ever be in a swinging world. Not necessarily just because of my body type, but more because as a solo person, it's more difficult. And as I've told you about that before, obviously, the swinging world is more set up for couples and really also for single women, which are known as the unicorns in the swinging world.
Yeah.
Because they're so rare to find one, especially not necessarily, they don't have to be, but most often, a lot of times, a lot of them are bisexual. So thumbs up for that. But as a single guy, it is not easy to crack into what you would call the swinging world or into the, I don't know what you want to call, maybe an underground sex world that probably exists in every city. They're everywhere. It's just that everything is kept really quiet and really secret because people don't want to be outed in those communities, because a lot of times you'll find people that you would never suspect, such as police officers or judges or military or teachers or nurses. I mean, some of those you would probably obviously suspect are, but they don't want anybody to know that they are.
So when you say you're like one of the most unlikely, prospects, how does something like that just show up in your life?
Well, it wasn't something I ever set out to do.
You tell me you never wanted to have a threesome? You never wanted to be in an orgy?
Well, of course I wanted that, but I never really set out to try to track that down.
It just didn't seem realistic.
Right. Not judging, from my early days level of success with women. It wasn't exactly what you call out of this world. And I'd spent most of the last 20 years before this time period married to one or the other of my two first and second wife, obviously. So I guess it's not obvious, but I was married twice over a 20-year period with a 2-year break in between them. And I just basically decided that after the second marriage, because I'd never really had a much of a wild phase when I was younger, that I was just going to date out and about. And so I did.
When you date out and about, how does swinging show up? Like you said, it's like a not a solo game, right?
No, it's not. And it's not one that you easily go out and find. So to give you a little more background, I've told you some of these stories before,
yeah.
But basically I was separated from my second wife, and because she wanted to see other people and we weren't really working out. And so we were split up for some time, but she still wasn't dating anybody else. And I wasn't really finding happiness anywhere either. So I said, well, I'm going to go ahead and start dating. I mean, you're the one that broke up really with me and kind of pushed me to, separate. So I started dating. And it didn't really go well in the beginning. Went out on a few dates. I got some action, it wasn't really great. It was okay. Again, this was also before, as we'll cover in another episode one of these days, my tantric journey hadn't started yet. So, for me, sex was, sex is sex. I never had the experience to where the kind of experience where people are like, wow, sex is amazing. I always thought, it's okay. Nothing great, nothing spectacular. And so I dated a few people. And then I ended up meeting this woman who was bisexual and was also polyamorous. So she was dating multiple people.
And you were okay with that, yeah?
Yeah, it was new for me. I'd never done that before. I've always been Mr. Monogamous, and that's pretty much what I wanted. I'm usually a pretty happy guy with just one person. I just want my one, my only, and the whole usual.
So it's not like a GI Joe toy, where you look at it, you're like, I want all of them, and I want multiples of all of them. With women, it's you want the one. I just want one. I'm happy with one.
Yeah, well, it's that's a debatable subject, but for right now, my energy level, I could probably handle one. But this was 5 years ago, and I was in a much healthier place at that point. But anyway, so she was polyamorous, whatever you want to call it. She was dating multiple people, and so I was basically just, I don't know, the second or third stringer, I guess, on the rotation, whatever. And I actually found that I kind of liked it because I didn't have any of the heavy duty responsibilities of being the one for somebody. I wasn't living with her. I wasn't having to worry about bills or commingling of finances. I was just the guy that occasionally I'd see her. We'd go out. We'd have a good time. We'd have sex. We'd have a good time, and I'd bounce. I was pretty.
I'm just thinking of the Seinfeld episode where is it Jerry is dating the girl that whenever he picks her up at her boyfriend's apartment, and he's like, "Hey, sweetie, you have a good night." And she's like, "All right." She was, "Okay, Jerry, let's go." And he's like, "What is going on here?" And it turns out that he's like, "Wait, so maybe she's just a lot of work, and like all the men are just dividing the workload. This makes sense. This makes so much sense." So essentially,
I would, yeah, maybe. I mean, I'd totally be okay with that in society, but it seems like the way it seems nowadays is that as the statistics go, about 20% of the men share all the women, and then the other 80% of the men pretty much don't get any women. That's the way.
That sounds terrible.
It is. It's terrible. And of course, the women, well, depending on the woman, they have a lot of action, but it also kind of keeps them from a lot of times settling down and having a family. I mean, that's part of the reasons why families and kids and everything are coming along so long, I think, in relationships and stuff. It's like, nobody ever wants to settle down. They're always looking for the next best thing. It's just one swipe away. It's both men and women. Except for women, it's typically easier than for men.
It is. I've talked to all my girlfriends, like, they never run out of swipes.
Oh, no.
They could be on Tinder and they could literally swipe right 400 times in a day, and there's still another 20,000 after that. Whereas if I go on, it's like, 3, all right, we're done for the day, cool. You know what I mean? Like, it's so few and far between. I've had the most luck with the swipes when I've been down visiting you in the States. I remember we're sitting at dinner one night, right?
Yeah.
And we're eating steak dinner, and then my phone goes off, and it's like, I got a match on Tinder. So then I look at it, and it's like, okay, sweet. I ask how she's doing. Then all of a sudden she's like, my boyfriend's out of town for the weekend. You're visiting town. You need to come over. And I'm like, I'm eating dinner right now. So this is a little forward, a little out there. And then you started to tell me amazing stories about your swigging days. And I just completely forgot about her. I just sat there with my steak dinner and just like grinned like an idiot listening to you talk. So that's why I really want to relay it on the podcast here, because I think other people would love to hear how you got into it and what it turned into.
Well, we'll keep going with the story. So I was with her for about a month and a half, and she was kind of a long ways away in the city. It was like a 40-mile drive, which is a long ways, which I don't know. I don't like to drive a long ways just for booty calls. But after a while, she really kind of ended it kind of really bad. I mean, it was okay because I wasn't, like too hung up on her or anything. And she basically just kind of ended it and just kind of like started kind of ignoring me instead of just kind of, I guess, womaning up and just saying, hey, I got something else going on, and let's just kind of call it quits for now. And basically she wanted to be more serious with her more serious guy. And so she went off to do that. And I'm like, okay, well, that's fine. That's cool. It's okay. I mean, I've had a couple months. I was, whatever. It wasn't going to be a real relationship, really. Like I said, I was just another number on the string. But it was a nice, easy situation, and it gave me a little bit of my mojo back. Let's just say, because I hadn't, because it was a pretty decent connection there sexually. So I kind of bummed around, dated a little bit more, and then I met a woman that I'm not going to use her real name, just in case she ever does listen. But
you could just say it was your mom.
No. I'll just call her Sarah, which is nowhere near her name. So I met this girl named Sarah, and I wouldn't say girl. She was a little bit younger than me, like 3 or 4 years.
So did you meet her like just on a dating app, or like through work, or?
I think it was off of Bumble, maybe.
Okay.
Maybe it was Tinder, it's either Tinder or Bumble.
Yeah.
I mean, even 5 or 6 years ago, you actually had a chance at meeting somebody on those things. Not like now, where it's like if you're not like really a top prospect, forget about it. You know, the women are so inundated by the hot dogs being slung at them that they don't have time. If you're not Joe Sixpack or Mr. Moneybags or whatever, you can pretty much forget it if you want, you know, an attractive woman. So anyway, so we hit it off. We talked a little bit online, went out to a bar, met up, had a really good connection. I was really on my game that night, you know, pulled a trick that's a really good trick to play. At least I've found it to be a good trick to, not really a trick, but a style is that you always test somebody and you kind of test how touchy feely they are with you a little bit into it. If you feel like it's going well, you know, if they kind of recoil away from you, obviously it's not going very well.
Yeah.
And if they touch you or, you know, hold your hand or, you know, kind of while you're talking, then you know it's going pretty well. So it seemed to be going pretty well. And I excused myself. I had to go to the restroom. And when I came back, instead of sitting across from her, I came back and sat down next to her. So that worked great. So we had a great conversation, ended up going back out to her van. She was the example of a soccer mom. She has 2 kids, and one of them actually does play soccer. And so she had the kind of soccer mom minivan thing going on, you know, and we ended up making out pretty hot and heavy in the car, and we had a good time. And then, we started seeing each other. So we start, you know, and I'd say probably the second date or so, we pretty much got all the way there and had a good time. And she was definitely, how shall I say, definitely a little bit more freaky than I was, you know, dabble again. Okay, I just came. Well, you gotta understand. Let's make sure everything is here. I'd spent pretty much the last 20 years married to a woman that basically became a roommate, and we almost never had sex. I spent 2 years, dated a couple of people, short-term periods, nobody else, you know, I had a little bit of sex, and then I met my second to be wife, and then that was great for a couple, 3 years, and then went downhill. So basically not exactly what you call the greatest 20 years of sex for the best years of my life, right?
Yeah. No.
So meeting Sarah, that's like I said, she was part Italian, which I love. I love shorter women. So she was 5'3". She was definitely probably one of the most beautiful women I'd ever been with at that time. And I still have really good thoughts about the time that I spent with her, which wasn't very long, it was a couple of months. But basically we got into things pretty freaky for a couple of months. She loved like a little bit of, you know, domination play. I started kind of discovering a little bit more of that side of me about how much fun it was, you know, the whole grabbing somebody by their hair, the whole domination, verbal domination, you know. I mean, just kind of, I wouldn't say it was abusive, but, you know, I mean, it was just very much of a dominant play type of thing.
But it was comfortable for both of you.
And it was comfortable for both of us. She enjoyed it, I enjoyed it, and it took me to places I didn't know I had inside of me, like in my psyche. So that was a fun new experience for me. And she was brilliant. She had gone to an Ivy League school. She was a valedictorian of her high school, and she was smart. And so she was a whole package as far as things go. I mean, she was a very smart woman that she could hold her own with me, you know, mentally. And sexually, she was just a dynamo. But anyway, during this whole thing, one of the things was that she had an ex-boyfriend, and he had gotten involved into the swinging world, right? And so she was telling me about some of this stuff, and I was like, well, that sounds kind of interesting, you know. I thought I'd check some of this stuff out.
And you'd never experienced anything like that before, right?
I never experienced any of that kind of stuff before. It was very similar to the fact of just like before I'd experienced it in a workshop, I had no idea what a prostate massage orgasm was. I'd heard of it. I kind of didn't believe that they were actually possible, you know, telling me that I could have an orgasm without having an ejaculation. For most, I would say probably for most guys, they'd be like, get out of town. That's not possible. And that's exactly the way I felt, you know, and until I experienced it and said, well, holy crap, this is possible and it's amazing. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'll check this stuff out. And we didn't really ever, actually, it was kind of a bummer. We kind of split up not too long after that, but I'd been kind of given some information and this website that I could find. And so I went to that and I started checking it out. And like I said, after we'd broken up, I started trying to okay, I said, I'm gonna go to one of these, I'm gonna see if I can go to one of these parties. And so I'm not sure if
So
I
like
told
through
you
the
about
website, you found an invitation or you found a group that?
Well, they had like a website where you become a member.
Yeah.
You can meet other people. There's forums. There's all these kind of things, and they also list like parties are going on. And how you can try to RSVP to them, and that the person that runs it has to accept you, for you to be able to go, that kind of thing. So I went to this. The first one I went to is probably the most shocking thing I've ever seen in my life. I mean, to that point in my life, right? And I went to this club, nervous as hell. Here I am, I'm in my mid 40s. I shouldn't be kind of nervous, but I mean, here I am by myself going to middle like an industrial area. And I don't mean like a nice looking industrial area, kind of a rundown industrial area. It's near our stadium here in Kansas City. And it's like 10 o'clock at night. It's really dark. There's not a lot of street lights. It looks like every kind of bad episode of like I'm going to get mugged. I'm going to get carjacked here, right? And here in the middle of nowhere, all these business buildings, there's a whole bunch of cars parked here and there and yonder, all on the side streets, which, by the way, if you're ever driving through a neighborhood and you wonder, there's all these cars here, what's going on? It could be a sex party.
Nice.
But so I go up to this place and it's really low key. It's kind of like the whole, like you knock at the door. It's like, you ever see Beer Fest? Like they knock at the door and the thing slides open and they're like, password.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like that, but not quite. I go into this front little foyer area and there's like a bouncer looking dude and a woman that's kind of scantily dressed, and they're taking money because you got to pay to go into the party. And it's not cheap for a single guy. Single guys pay more than anybody else. I mean, you get in for it. Yeah, of course.
Because every single guy wants to go.
Exactly. Every single guy does want to go. So it was like $40 or something like that. And it's BYOB because, that way you can't get in trouble with the law for like selling alcohol or anything like that. So I go in and I'm walking around. I make myself some drinks and I'm walking around, and it's still kind of early. Yeah, I got in there a little early, maybe. And I walk out in the back porch, and literally there's like 3 or 4 big black dudes on the back porch, just getting full on head, just like going to friggin' town. And I'm just kind of like, okay, I'm definitely not in Kansas anymore. So a couple of guys looked over. I kind of tipped my glass and walked back in. I mean, I'm not sure I'm going to stand there and just watch. That's a little bit much for me at this point. So I'm just thinking in my mind.
Although if they go to lots of these, it's probably natural and normal for an audience, right? So
it is, exactly. So I was like, okay, this is different for me. So I go back inside and I'm talking to a few people, and there's various rooms that you can go in, and like usually like a group of people go in there and they'll lock the door and they'll have their fun or whatever, and the other people are mingling and stuff. And so it's pretty tame at this point. I ended up this one girl I'd talked to online, I ended up going into a room with her and ended up getting into a situation where I'm going down on her, and like she's sucking some other guy off, and then it just got crazier from there. I ended up banging her and doing that and finishing up in there and going back out, and it was pretty wild, and
so you're like $40 well spent.
Well, I mean, I'm like, well, at least I got laid, right?
Well, yeah.
So I go into this other room, and this lady's there with her husband, and he's kind of warming her up to basically get one of the biggest, longest dicks I've ever seen for another guy there. And so he finishes kind of warming her up a little bit, and the next thing you know, I'm standing around with about 4 or 5 other people, and we're all just watching this other dude with a super huge cock just rail her out. I mean, just go to town. I mean, like crazy town. I mean, it's like,
So out of the 4 or 5 guys, one of them was her husband.
Yeah, that was watching. Yeah. And it was pretty crazy. And then a couple other people took turns. So I decided I was not going to involve myself in that because first of all,
she's just going to be disappointed if you
yeah,
pull your pants up,
exactly,
right?
exactly. You're right. Yeah, all these guys were packing like at least 9 to 12 inches. I mean, it was insane. I'd never seen anything that big in person in my life.
Charlie Ray sitting in the corner, rocking back and forth and crying.
Like, oh yeah, I was born white. Anyway, so I hung around a little bit longer and then I bailed. So that was my first ever experience going to some kind of club that was like
And that was just like you heard from her and she gave you a website and you found a forum and you're good to go.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Pretty much. I mean, they seemed to be a new club, so they were just needing money. So I think that helped me getting in since I didn't know anybody and I was willing to pay to get in. There was a lot more dudes than women at this party. Yeah, it was okay. It was kind of an unusual experience that changed me psychologically from that point forward. Let's put it that way.
So then at that point, what do you decide? Do you think, well, this is my weekend now, this is what I'm going to try and do? Because that was interesting and I wonder how it can get better or will it get worse?
No, and that wasn't quite my thought. My thought was kind of, that was interesting, but I'm not sure this is really my thing. It wasn't. I mean, again, it's kind of more fun with a partner. And so this is where it gets a little bit weird. So,
that first part wasn't weird at all, right?
No, that's
I
not
drove
weird at
out
all.
to the shitty part of the city and sort of snuck around the industrial area. I paid some dude $40 and I watched a bunch of guys with 12-inch cocks plow this guy's wife. But you know what? This is where it gets interesting. You should hear this part of the story.
Well, let's just put it this way. By the time I get to this end of the story, I had things on my bucket list that weren't even on my own bucket list that got accomplished. Let's put it that way. So at this point,
list.
Yes, my bucket list. I don't really have much on my bucket list.
Well, not anymore.
I know there is one unusual thing that not unusual. There's one thing that I haven't done that it's unusual I haven't accomplished yet. But I'll cover that later on in the story.
All right.
So it became really clear to me from the experience and from what I was kind of talking with people online that it's really more of a couples game. I mean, it is, the whole point is called swinger, and the whole point, not the whole point, but there's various levels of swinging, right? So I'm not sure if you know this stuff, but there's like soft swap, hard swap, there's all these different things. And so like soft swap is like you might watch each other, but you don't touch each other's spouses or girlfriends. Like, it might just be kind of a watching thing, or the girls might fool around a little bit, but the guys don't fool around with the other girls, just their own girl. Then you have a hard swap, which is more of like a, hey, your girl comes with me and my girl goes with you. And then there's like, sometimes it's only in the same room. Sometimes they're allowed to be in separate rooms. Every couple's different. That's the thing. I mean, everybody has different limits, and, you either take those limits further or you don't, or whatever,
Yeah.
And so, but basically the whole point though is that it's better if you have a partner, because obviously the women really kind of run the whole scene.
And so they should.
Yes. They're the gatekeepers. If they don't want to bang the other guy, it's not going to happen. Right. Yeah. Because the guys are guys. I mean, as long as they're not horrible, they're going to bang somebody. Right.
Well, they're going to try to.
They're going to try to. Right. So I didn't really have anybody because I wasn't dating anybody. So I was still friends with my second ex-wife to be. We were separated. So I talked to her, and she thought she wanted to try because she's all into, she's, went on to study to become a sex coach. And so she was interested in kind of learning about this world and seeing what it's all about. So we went to a party together, and that was interesting.
That's totally got to alleviate a lot of the nervousness that you had the first time. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
absolutely.
You're like 100% comfortable with this person.
Yes, 100%. But so we go to a party, and the second party we go to was like the exact opposite of what the first party I went to was. So the second
just
party,
a bunch of white dudes with really small penises.
Well, first of all, it was basically almost all white people, and a lot of them were older, and I mean even older than I was. And there wasn't very many people there, so it was pretty boring little party. I mean, everybody was nice. I didn't end up messing around with anybody else. So me and my ex-wife actually started fooling around. And so she started giving me a blowjob up in her room. And then this guy wandered in while we were doing it and just started watching us. And so that was an unusual experience for me. I mean, I've never had anybody just watch me. I mean, it's like, I was like, can we get you some popcorn or something? You know, I mean, and he was just like, I mean, he was just full on eyeballing it going down. And she's like, I don't care, whatever. I'm like, okay, we'll keep going. I mean, obviously, you know, Jimmy's still up for the entertainment. So that happened. He didn't say anything to us. That was the weirdest part. He didn't say anything to us. It was just kind of like this, like weird, silent guy that watched me get head.
It was his first party. He was you, but the next weekend. You know what I mean?
Right.
So would it be more strange? Like you said, he just stood there, sat there.
He did. Like, he like sat there on one side, and then like he went to the other side to get a better angle. I don't know.
So what if he started giving you directions and instructions? Put your hand here, move like this, do this, make this sound. Like he started to direct what he was watching in front of him. Do you think you and the ex-wife would have just played along? Because why not?
I don't know what would have happened. That's not what happened. But who knows what would have happened with that situation. It didn't. And I was like, okay, well, that was weird. And she thought it was a little weird. And so again,
you're at a sex party. That's weird. You know,
it's weird.
It's just a guy watching, which is probably the least sexual thing at the sex party you guys experienced.
Oh yeah, but you know, everything was weirder because this was the beginning of my couple of years in that world. So we went to another party, I think, but I can't really remember much about it, and not really much happened. And then we went to a bar event, because they'll have events at bars that are kind of like more like meet and greets type of situations where you just meet people, you know, that are interested in that. And, you know, you maybe meet people that you might make plans for hooking up with like on a weekend or something. So we went to a Halloween party. So it was all dressed up and stuff. And my ex-wife was getting a lot of attention. She had quite a few people that really wanted to, you know, have their way with her. So, and I wasn't doing so well. We had one couple that kind of wanted to maybe have a weekend, like us two couples hook up and, you know, swap, but she wasn't really interested in the dude, and the girl had like some really kind of bad breath, I think. Yeah. And so I know what it was. I think they were smokers, and we weren't smokers. And so we weren't really interested, but we didn't want to be mean or anything. So we were being nice to them. And that was okay. We ended up going to another house party together, and then she brought along a friend of hers and another girlfriend of hers, and they ended up meeting the guy there at the party, and so they took him in a room and they had a good time with him, and that really kind of messed me up a little bit psychologically.
Yeah, I could see that.
My ex-wife's getting screwed in another room, you know.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, this isn't really going to work for me. I can't really do the swinging thing with her because I still have feelings for her. I'm still mostly, like I said, I'm mostly, you know, a monogamous kind of person. So like you said, so far, this is not the most interesting story in the world. This is just me kind of dipping my toes into things, right? So I continued going on to a couple more parties kind of on my own. You know, I think I got some, I remember at one party, I was there and I was standing around a bed with several other people, and we were watching a couple people having sex and just standing, you know, just all standing around there watching, drinking and stuff. And I was standing pretty close to the bed, and one of the girls, I don't even know her name, I was standing close to the bed, just reached over and grabbed my junk and unzipped my fly while she was getting nailed doggy style and just started sucking me off right there, you know. And I'm like, oh, this is great. You know, this is awesome. You know, everybody's standing around. I'm just getting blown, and while she's getting rode. And it's like, okay, well, this is happening. You know, I mean, this is the kind of weird stuff that can happen. You know. Then I met this other lady that I was with. It was nothing ever serious. She's a long time person that's been in the scene, the swinging scene. But man, she was really good at sex. Let me tell you, she was top notch. I will say this, if you ever have the chance and you meet a woman who is currently or formerly or recently an equestrian, hold on to your balls, because man, they are going to fuck the shit out of you. Because just put it this way, this is a woman who's used to riding a horse. Now think about how strong those legs are and how muscular that ass is.
Yeah.
It is pretty damn amazing. She almost broke my neck.
What a way to go.
It was. So she was a lot of fun. I liked her, but as they say, she belongs to no man. She belongs to the streets. So she doesn't belong to anybody. She belongs to herself, and she's probably had more sex than I even want to contemplate knowing. So let's just put it that way. And went to a couple really exciting parties. Had some couple of times where I was having sex and several people standing around watching, and I'm like, okay, this is still still pretty okay. But at that point, I'd kind of been around long enough. People had seen me enough parties, and they knew that I wasn't like super weird or creepy, or that I was going to be like, I didn't go around pestering women and just trying to screw everything that moved or whatever. I just tried to be a respectful kind of person. And from there, I ended up getting a couple of offers to do some gangbang situations. And you're just like, yes, this sounds like a really hard life you're living.
Go on.
But just kind of the situation to where I was a single guy on the scene, and I wasn't attached to anybody. And you keep your mouth shut. You don't share a lot of details. And again, I'm not going to, nobody's going to know who I'm talking about or who they were. I had a couple of situations to where I got invited along, to be one of the gang in the bang part, So, we went to like a, pretty decent little hotel one time as a husband and his wife, and there's about 4 of us guys. And it was a pretty wild situation that involved sometimes her going airtight, as they would say. Do you know what that means?
She's probably filled up in every hole.
That's right. You got it. And a couple of times where people would just take turns. I mean, you'd rest for a little bit. Somebody else would tap in. It was like a wrestling match, only it was like a tag team times 4, and then the husband would take turns. Sometimes he'd be filming stuff, and as long as it wasn't like getting people's faces in the filming, because they do. I'm like, yeah, you film it as long as I just don't want my face in anything. And so that was a really good time. Did that a couple more times. Some pretty hot women at a couple of these. Usually I was not on the well endowed side of the people, but I did provide comic relief, I guess. So I mean, I was there. I had, I'm an average guy, so average it is, but I was not packing, obviously, what some of the people on the scene do. But you know what? That's not all there is to it, because there was plenty of guys that were average in the scene. Yeah. It's just that usually the whole thing is that a lot of times more of the husbands and the boyfriends and stuff were the average with the woman, and a lot of the single guys were the package deliverers. Let's just put it that way. So like I said, this is again why I would say this is my unlikely journey in the swinging world, because I was not what you would call, I was not the 6-pack ab guy. I wasn't over 6 foot. I wasn't super young. I wasn't ready to, slay cattle with my massive rod. I was, but you know what? I know what I'm doing, and experience can count for a lot. So basically the whole thing is, this is over, like I said, this is over about a 2-year period. There'd be times where I'd take a break and I wouldn't do anything. A lot of times just nothing ever working out. And then I went to a really big party with that one girl I'd mentioned that had been in the scene for a while, and this was the wildest night of my life. So this is the best story I got.
I was just gonna ask him, like, what's the most what the fuck moment?
What the fuck moment I have. This is probably it.
All right, hold on, let me get comfortable.
Where's your other hand at?
It's busy. Don't worry about it. Just don't worry about it.
So again, without giving out too much more information for anybody, like anybody in Kansas City might listen to this, but we went to this massive party. And I don't know if the guy still doesn't, but this guy was a medical professional, let's just say, really high, fully, guy made a lot of money, had a big, massive house. And so I went to this party, and I was able to get into it because I went with her, and it was like 200 people in there. I mean, packed into it was a huge house. It was like, it was like a 3-level house. And there was half naked people everywhere, girls without shirts on, this, that, and the other. I mean, all kinds of crap going on. Actually, let me change that. I actually didn't go to that party with her. I went with somebody else, but she was there.
Okay.
And so I saw her, we started talking. And so I was walking around with her talking to, and we ended up going upstairs. And then she ended up going down this girl while this other guy was behind her, taking her from behind. I'm watching this other girl and this guy, and they're getting it on. And when they were done, she's like, "You want some too?" And I was like, "Okay." So I did. And, you know, in the meantime, there's another, you know, bunch of sex going on in this bed in this other room right next door, the door open. And I'm like, okay. And we wander around some more. There's pretty much sex going on like in every room. Wander down to the basement, and they got
So is this all protected sex or non-protected sex? Like are there rules, or?
I think it's kind of like what somebody's comfortable with. There's some people using protection, some people that aren't. But I can't tell. I mean, some of the people not having protected sex might be the boyfriend and the girlfriend.
Yeah, you know? I mean, you don't know.
You know, I don't know. Right.
There's 200 people at the party. There's no way for you to know who's with you.
Yeah, and I don't know who a lot of people are. And I wander down in the basement, and there's a girl strapped onto like a table thing, and they got one of those, I guess you would call them a fucking machine, but basically it's like an engine with the rod and a dildo on the end, just jackhammering her, you know. That was an interesting new experience. And wandered around some more. Ended up in a bedroom. Ended up being the master bedroom. And there's a whole bunch of people in there. And I'd kind of separated from this girl that I'd been with a couple times. And she's in there, and she's fooling around with the guy, and he's got a penis pump on her vulva.
Okay.
So I didn't know you could really do this. So basically, he's got her vulva like super pumped up. I mean, like massively engorged with like blood, and he's fooling around with her, and I'm playing around with her nipples, and she's just going ape crap. I mean, she's just going just crazy because I mean, like her pussy is just swollen, you know, all up, and ends up moving her to the bed, and she's riding him like reverse cowgirl, and she's got me in her mouth, and then next to me is a girl riding a guy's face while this other girl's going down on him. It's kind of like catty corner on the bed. It's like a huge king size bed, and then next to her is a girl with a strap on fucking another girl right there, and then next to her is another woman having sex with a guy, and it's all on the bed, and I'm just standing there while this is all going on going, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. I am literally in a porno movie.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, it was great. And then, but to make it even more hilarious is the fact that there's probably at least 8 or 9 people all in the room standing around watching, drinking, talking to each other. Some of them are touching themselves. I mean, and everybody's just watching all this stuff, and people are just going to town, and it's just like, you know, I mean, people are having a conversation like, you know, they're at friggin' Arby's, you know, like, well, what do you think of the Royals today, you know, or whatever. It was.
They've been to, you know, a couple parties before. It's just so normal to them, they don't even care.
Some of these people had been in the scene. This was their social life. It wasn't my social life. This is what they did. They'd go to parties like a couple times a month. You know, they knew everybody. I mean, a lot of these people all knew everybody. They'd go to bars, they'd hang out, they'd do things, they'd hook up with other couples on weekends. Like I said, I was a very minor player in this scene. I knocked so many things off my bucket list that I never thought.
It sounds like you knocked almost all of it over in one night. You're like, oh, cross that off, cross that off, cross that off.
You know, but there's a lot of nice people in the scene. There's some people that aren't so nice. You know, I mean, it's just like people everywhere. You know, and this just involves a lot of hot, dirty sex. You know, which is not a bad thing. You know, obviously, if you are a woman that wants to get into this scene, you are going to be slam bammed and whatever, ma'am, to your heart's content. There are plenty of people that want to do this. If you're a single guy, you know, either you're going to need to know somebody, have a really hot smoking woman to bring with you, or really be able to deliver stuff that most guys can't. And you know, according to statistics, that's less than 3% of men that are actually packing over 7 inches. So, but if you are, bless you, because you're getting every door open for you. Yeah, you know. So anyway, so going back to everything else, you know, some things that I did not have on my bucket list was I ended up actually fisting somebody. I'd never done that before.
Okay.
That was the something I hadn't planned on ever doing, but I've done.
Was she guiding you to do it, or did you just instinctively do it?
No, she wanted me to do it.
Okay.
And then saying the one thing that I surprisingly have never done is that I've never had anal sex with a woman or a man, just to make sure that that's clear. But
Well, it's the same either way, right? It's just people.
Yeah, basically. But so yeah, so surprisingly, that's never happened. I'm not saying that I'm adverse to it. It's just never really presented itself at the time and place to make it happen. But who knows? Life's.
You're probably at the right place, just not the right time.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure you could have found one of those rooms that was the all anal room.
Probably. So that was pretty much kind of the culmination of my years. I kind of dabbled a little bit more. I went to some more meet and greets, but I just really could never connect with anybody. And honestly, a couple of years of that had really kind of shown me that it really wasn't my thing as a single guy. I mean, it was more like along the lines of I wasn't really getting much choice. I wasn't really having many opportunities come my way, and it was just basically just a lot of waste of time and money. And I figured, hey, if I ever get to the point where I'm in the future relationship and a woman wants to experience that world, I'd be happy to introduce her to it. But for the most part, at this point in my life, I'm really kind of looking more for the whole connection with one person.
So going through all that previously to who you are now, would you have done anything different, or are you super happy that you went down that path for a couple of years?
I think I'm happy I went down that path for a couple of years. It led me, as well as my other journey that was going on, where I was studying more about sexuality, and I got into energy work and tantra work, and that's going to be, like I said, another whole episode of discussion. But this was all kind of me trying to refine my mojo from what I had lost. I didn't feel like I was really that interested in sex after my second marriage, and I really needed to kind of find that part of myself. But once I found that, I wanted to find something more. I wanted to refine what I felt like was still missing, and then that's what led me to becoming trained in Reiki, energy work. I started learning how to do that, which went on to my sensual massage training, and eventually my tantra massage training, and trying to connect with the energy and the possibilities of your body to actually go even deeper, I think, in a lot of ways sexually. But again, that'll be another story.
So you're like really into your tantric stuff, right?
Yes.
And more. Yeah. Do you think that you wouldn't be there with that right now if it wasn't for that journey into the swinging club? Like, do you think you would have made those steps? Do you think you would have gotten to where you are now?
I don't know.
That?
I don't know. I think in a lot of ways, it led me into wanting to discover what more was possible. Because
you can see, people fucking. Sex is sex, fucking is fucking.
Yeah.
But you wanted the next level. You wanted to, get the feeling in there, the energy of it. Not just the act of doing it. You wanted to, be in the moment, not just to have the moment.
Exactly. I wanted to become more of that. And plus during that time period is when I experienced the prostate massage orgasm, and I was able to have that.
Oh fuck! I give those to myself at least 6 times a week. I'm getting so good. I'm doing one right now.
That's why you're smiling.
I said I'm getting real good. Of course I'm smiling.
So that gave me the ability to understand that a man can have much longer orgasms, can have much more pleasure, can actually feel pleasure all over their entire body instead of just in their crotch, just in their dick. And then that took me along the journey of wanting to, I read all these things. And again, it was one of these things like, oh, I've read this is possible, but I don't believe it because, I've never experienced it. And then once you experience something, you go, well, if that's possible, maybe some of this other stuff that sounds way too far-fetched is actually possible, and it's not bull crap. And I want some of that. So that's pretty much my story as far as the swinging world goes.
So if you were to give anybody any advice, let's say there's a listener who's like, okay, I liked what I heard, I want to pick some of that stuff up. How would they go about becoming part of that lifestyle? How would they want to try it, be a single guy or, in a partnership? What's the easiest route, you would say?
Well, as far as a single guy goes, there's really no easy foot in the door. The easiest foot in the door is to have a hot partner hot wife, which is actually a term for a guy who likes to have his wife have sex with other men while he watches a hot wife. But have a good looking wife, have a good looking girlfriend, or have a good looking friend that you're actually even not, which is actually a pretty good idea. Is if you can find a friend, a very sexual, possibly slutty, hot friend, that likes sex a lot and is a little bit more leery about doing things by herself, but you're good friends with her. Whether you have sex with her or not is immaterial. I mean, you might not be that kind of relationship, but as long as you're able to basically kind of use each other as the partner in this kind of situation, then you both can have a lot of fun and you can both be more safe that way because you're with somebody you know.
But that's still, sorry, go ahead.
Well, and then from there, basically, you just got to kind of, look around and, I don't know. I mean, how would you find out if there's a swinging scene? I mean, there's various swingers websites in different parts of the United States.
Yeah.
You could maybe ask the person at like your local adult bookstore or type of place, say, hey, are you aware of any kind of whatever? And they might be able to give you a clue. It's not easy to find this stuff always, but most major cities, I would say, probably they do have a scene. And there's look for something that they call like a munch, which is part of like the FetLife scene. And FetLife's a website. FetLife, that's more of a the fetish side of the swinging scene and sexual scene. There's all kinds of stuff out there. And if you're a person that's not experienced in all this stuff, it's a whole different world that you don't even know exists. You just got to look around. You got to be inquisitive and you got to kind of pay attention. And like I said, if you'd been driving through that industrial neighborhood in the middle of the night at like 11 o'clock at night, you'd be like, why is there like 50 cars out here and I don't see any lights on any buildings?
There's a lot of people working in the dark. This is weird.
Exactly. And it made me think of times when I'd driven through certain places and I'd seen a bunch of cars and I was like, why are all these cars here? And there's like nothing around. That's probably what it was. I just didn't know.
Missed opportunity.
And some of these people, they have house parties that, some of these people sometimes you see these big house parties and you think, man, they got a really good, party going on over there. You don't know what might be going on in their basement. There might be all kinds of swinging action going on. You don't know. So that's not really much of an answer. Like I said, I'm kind of out of the game. So
yeah, I guess you had somebody to sort of lead you there, right? The
minivan.
Yeah. The minivan girl.
Yes.
The hot mom.
Yes, the hot mom. Yeah. It was a world that I had not planned on entering. I wasn't looking for it. That was never my intention. I mean, it's not like I never knew something like that existed. I just never really went out trying to be part of it. Exactly. And like I said, I just kind of dabbled along the edges, got lucky a few times, had some experiences. Again, would you ever have told me a few years ago, hey, you're going to be involved in a couple of wild gangbangs with some really hot girls and like 4 or 5 guys taking turns? Like, no, I would not say that was ever part of my life that I had planned.
Yeah.
So, but I got
great memories to experience it. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It becomes a part of you. It becomes a lifelong story that people can listen to on the Answers for Everything podcast.
There you go.
Obviously with Sarah's name changed. So we're good to go.
Yeah, that's Charlie Ray's adventures right there. I got so good I even yelled my own name out.
Oh my God.
Yes, Charlie Ray.
Did they kick you out?
No, I never did that. But I would now just because it'd be funny.
I don't care if I'm coming back. I'm the best.
Damn, that's right. I am good. Oh, that makes me think of another story. When I was at this one house party and basically this Jamaican girl and her boyfriend like grabbed me and pulled me in a room. And basically she just wanted to have sex with a white guy. And I happened to be walking by at the right time. So
it's definitely the right place, the right time.
It was unexpected and highly appreciative. Oh, man, this makes me think of some other stories I forgot all about. I have a whole bunch of these stories. I had my joke. You never forget your first threesome. You, her husband in the corner taking notes. That was an interesting night too. So, but yeah, that's my adventures, and that's all I'm going to say for now on that subject.
Well, I'm glad you were willing to open up.
Anytime, Mr. Clay.
Can't say I have anything as exciting, so we're just probably going to leave it at that. And
all right, sounds good.
I want to thank you for taking the time out again. It's always a pleasure to listen to you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm happy to share my stories. If it helps some young Padawan on their way to getting their lightsaber wet, then I'm good to go.
Last week I'm talking about poop stories, and this week you're talking about gangbangs.
Yes. You never know what you're gonna hear on Answers for Everything.
I think people are probably a little bit more excited about the stuff you have to talk about versus the stuff I have to talk about.
Yes. What was it? What was the name of that city again? What was the name of that city that you named it after? The
Bellingham.
The Bellingham, yes.
And then we didn't talk about the Black Pearl.
Yeah. Well, we can save that. Let's not ruin the ambiance on this one.
Oh, no. This is a beautiful episode with a lot of romance in it.
Yes.
A lot of advice to those young, sexy men and women out there who want to get their fuck on.
Yes, indeed.
Go find some kink, fet, threesome apps. They're all over the place.
And keep your eyes and ears open, because you never know where a string might take you or a conversation you might hear going on, because sometimes you think, these people are just talking crap, when they're talking about real stuff. And if you listen, you might just be able to get involved in it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Right, man. It's been a pleasure. Right. And look forward to chatting with you next week.
Sounds great. Thanks, Mr. Clay. Anytime, always happy to be here.
Right. Peace out.
Peace.